This is the scholarship equation. If you want more interest and offers from college coaches, then this is how you do it. I'm going to walk you through what these different pieces are and how you can apply them to your recruiting process to get more interest and offers from college coaches. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jack. I run D1 Scholarship. We help high school athletes and college transfer athletes navigate the college recruiting process. We have multiple players who have double-digit interest, and I'm going to show you how hopefully you can do the same thing for you or your kid. Okay, there's three pieces to this, and I'm going to walk you through what these are. The first one is volume. Now, when I talk about volume literally, in the most literal term, the way that I'm using it, means the amount of work that you do. Okay, what you are putting into the equation. And the higher your volume, the more work that you do, the more scholarships you are going to get. And when we talk about work, what I mean is the amount of videos that you make, the amount of emails that you send, the amount of showcases that you go to, right? All of those would comprise volume. I'm going to mostly talk about email when we talk about volume today, but there are lots of different pieces that can go into that. Just understand that. And so I think a lot of families drastically underestimate the amount of volume required to get the amount of interest and offers that they're looking for. Okay. They think that I'm going to go make 20 emails and send 20 emails off and I'm going to get probably 5 or 6 responses. And that's unrealistic. Does it happen for some families? Yes. Does it happen for most? No. And so I want to walk you through how volume can completely change your recruiting process. So let's start with that list of 20, okay? Because I think that a lot of players put together a list of between 15 and 30 schools. That's where most land. So let's say that you have 20 schools on a list and you get an 80% open rate. You are tracking your email stuff, which not every family is. You definitely should be if you're not. But let's say that you get an 80% open rate, which would be a very solid open rate, right? We average 85% plus, which is really high. Most that I see from other people are around 50, 60%. So if you're at an 80% open rate, that means that 16 coaches of the 20 are going to open one of your emails. Okay, now of those 16, let's assume that you get a 70% click-through rate on your videos, because that's the whole reason to send an email, right? You're trying to get the coach to watch your video. So let's say 70% of them do. Again, that's a very high percentage. That means that 11.2 coaches are going to click on and watch one of your video. Now, expect a 10% reply rate. Now, again, this would be a little bit on the high end. It's still about in the middle. I'm going to say average, but you can expect anywhere from 5 to 10% reply rate. So that means that you would get 1.12 replies. You get one coach to reply if you emailed 20 schools. Now, I'm guessing that you're probably not super stoked about one reply, right? You would like more than that. Now, let's look what happens if we don't improve any part of this process except the amount of volume that we send, right? The email doesn't get better. The video doesn't get better. The player doesn't get better. Everything else remains the same except for the amount of volume that we send. Look what happens. Let's say we email 100 schools. That's 5 times as many schools. If we get an 80% open rate, we're looking at 80 opens, and a 70% click-through rate on those 80 opens would give us 56 coaches and clicks who are watching and evaluating the player. And then let's expect a 10% reply rate off the top of that. You're looking at 5.6 replies. That's almost 6 coaches. That's 5 times as many as the first example, and nothing else changed except for the amount of volume that you are sending. And so I cannot stress this enough. If you only have 10 or 15 or 20 schools on your list, you're probably going to need significantly more. The more that you send, the more interest that you're going to get. Okay, so that's the first piece of the equation is volume. We simply need to do more. And we haven't talked about sending more video or follow-ups or showcases and tournaments and camps. We haven't talked about that. That's okay. Let's start with email and the volume of email, because you can do it from your living room couch. There's no finances revolving around email. So that's just effort. Okay, so that's the first piece. The second piece here is skill. And I'm going to make myself smaller so that you can see this a little bit easier. The second piece is skill. Okay. Now, when we talk about skill, not every player is going to be the same skill level, right? Some are better and some are worse. Here's the thing about skill. and marketing in the college recruiting process. They are inversely proportional. What that means is that the better of a player you are, the less marketing that you need to do for yourself, right? And this just intuitively makes sense. If you are an incredibly good player and you're top 5 or 10% in the country, you probably don't need to do that much marketing and you're probably going to get found. But as that talent level decreases, the amount of marketing that you need to do to get yourself on the radars of college coaches increases, right? And so these are what we would say inversely proportional. Now, I want to walk you through an example and what this looks like. If you look at this piece right here next to inversely proportional, we have a volume of 2. Now, these numbers are between 1 and 10, and I just am using them as an arbitrary indicator, okay? I'm not saying this is sending 2 emails or 1 email. This is just an arbitrary indicator that's giving us some point of reference, okay? So volume is a 2. And let's say your skill is you are a 4 out of 10, something like that. You're an okay player. You're not that great. But you did twice as much volume as the example below it, and yet your output is going to be exactly the same as the person who only did a volume of 1 but had a skill level of 8, right? They're both going to come out to 8. Why? Because they're inversely proportional. The person who had more skill needed to do less volume. The person who had less skill needed to do twice as much volume to reach the same result. Right? Okay, that should intuitively make sense. Now let's look at the bottom example of what happens when you are still on the inversely proportional side, but you don't actually follow those norms. So for instance, let's say your volume is a 1, okay? You're not putting very much effort in at all. And let's say your skill level is a 2. You're not a great player. Then you are going to get an output of 2. That would be a very low output. Now look at the next one, right? Let's say your volume is 4. You are doing 4 times as much as the guy who's only doing 1. And then let's say that your skill is an 8. You are a really good player, right? Much better than most of the other players out there. And so you have both pieces. You have the volume piece and you have the skill piece. This is where you get that output of 32, which is completely outsized. And that's where you're going to start to see players who are pretty good, right? They're not even at the 9 or 10 level. They're just at 8s. And they're pretty good, but they have a crazy amount of interest. Why? Because their marketing and their volume is significantly higher than everyone else's. That's how that's happening. And that's where we get that ideal part, right? If you're a 9 or a 10, you probably don't need that much help in the recruiting process. You're probably just going to get found. The problem is there are very few players who actually fall into a 9 or 10 level category. Most are an 8 to a 6 who are capable of playing college sports. Those are the players who are going to have to do a lot of volume and marketing in order to get their name out there. Okay, so that's the second piece of this. We have the volume piece, we have the skill piece, and now we head to the time piece. Because this is another one that a lot of people get in their heads and they get completely discouraged when they only do something for like 30 days, right? They get in their head, I'm going to go send a bunch of emails. So they go send 20 emails in that first month and they only get 1 reply, right? Because we just did the math on that. And then they stop sending emails because they say, well, this doesn't work. And they only do it for 1 month, not knowing that learning compounds on itself and that they're actually going to get more interest over time if they have a long enough time horizon. Too many families are trying to rush the recruiting process. They're trying to say, how can we get it over in 1 month or 2 months? That's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, if we have a long enough time horizon, isn't it reasonable that we would get interest from a lot of schools if we have the volume piece and we have the skill piece? Of course. So we, in a lot of cases, just need to expand the time horizon and say, can we think in terms of 6 months or 12 months? And we're giving ourselves so much more runway to actually accomplish what we're looking to accomplish. So let's walk through this time piece so that we can see what this looks like practically. Okay, look on the left side here. We have 1 new school every month. Let's say that with the whatever you're doing right now to get interest from college coaches, you get 1 new school every month. That means in 2 months, you'd have 2 schools. And in 5 months, you'd have 5 schools. In 10 months, you'd have 10 schools, right? But here's the thing. The thing is that when you continue learning and getting better and applying what it is that you've learned, it actually compounds on itself. It's not just going to be 1 new school every month, because here's what's going to happen. In the first month, you're going to know very little, right? You don't know anything about getting interest from college coaches, and so you only get 1 interested school. And so by month 2, you actually know a little bit more than you did before. So it's not going to be that you get 2 interested schools. You might get 3 because maybe you're able to tweak your email a little bit better, or maybe you're able to get different video because now you have a better idea of what college coaches are looking for. And so by month 5, you actually know a good bit about college recruiting. You're not in the same place as you were 5 months ago. And so that is not going to still be one school at a time each month. It's going to be more than that because your learning is compounding on itself. And so now in month 5, you actually have something like 8 schools that are interested. And by month 10, you're really grooving because you have 10 months of learning in the recruiting process, and you might have something like 15 schools compared to the 10 that you would have had before. And it's simply because learning compounds over time, and you only get those benefits if you stay in the game long enough. If you are not in the game for a long enough period of time, you will not be able to reap the benefits of compounding. If you're a parent and you're watching this, you've probably experienced this with money, right? Money compounds over time. So does learning in the recruiting process. It's the same. And so those are the 3 pieces that we want to have in place and that we need to have in place in the recruiting process. If we have the volume piece, and the more volume that we do, the more interest we're going to get, right? So we have the volume piece and the skill piece. This is where development comes in, getting better at your craft, getting better at the sport, getting bigger, faster, stronger, those kinds of things. If we can increase the skill, and then lastly, we can increase the time horizon that we are evaluating our recruiting process on, then we are going to get so much more interest in offers than we would have had otherwise. Now, the hardest one to increase in this equation is skill. Right? Skill is very difficult to increase, but here's the good news. Even if skill stays the same over a number of years, we can still get more interest in offers simply by increasing the amount of volume that we do, which is just effort, and time that we manage it on, right? If we can increase that time horizon and just give us a longer period of time, then we can get more interest. This is why it's challenging for second semester seniors to get interest in offers. Why is that? Because they have a very short time horizon that they can operate on. That is almost a fixed amount. When you are earlier in the recruiting process, time, it might be a fixed amount, but it's a significantly larger amount than a second semester senior. It's because it goes into this equation. And that is why we are looking to expand our time horizon, do more volume, and get to be as good of a player as we possibly can. If you follow this equation and you actually do these things that we just talked about, it's going to be challenging for you to not get interest in offers in the recruiting process. The problem is that a lot of times we get distracted by other things that are not actually going to help us. These are the only 3 things that really matter when it comes to getting interest and offers in the college recruiting process. If you like this video or you thought that this was helpful, go watch some more on the channel. There's a couple more on there, and we're just going to continue to add these. I hope this is helpful, and I hope you have a great day.